It was the summer of 2010. I got off work early so I could make it home in time to watch the World Cup semifinal. Holland versus Uruguay. Great game. One of the most exciting soccer games I'd ever seen. Holland ends up winning 3-2 off of a late goal. The game was played in South Africa, so they keep showing live shots of each home country. And when they show Uruguay, they show the streets of Montevideo. And it looks like a good time. People are outside, they're having fun. And then they show this park in Amsterdam. And it looks like the greatest party I've ever seen in my life. People going nuts. Orange smoke everywhere. Cowbells. It was crazy. So after the game's over, they're doing the post-game, and they cut back to that park. And people are still there, going crazy. This commentator in this English accent says something that just immediately struck me. As they pan the crowd and all these people having the time of their life, he says, Holland's going to their first World Cup final in 36 years, and they'd never won one before. He said if they were to win on Sunday night, the greatest party in the history of the world may very well break out. I thought, wow, the greatest party in the history of the world? I have to go. I felt like he was speaking directly to me. My mind started racing, and I just started thinking about how I could get to Amsterdam for the weekend. I opened up my laptop and started frantically searching every travel site I could think of. Within 10 minutes, I'd figured out that I could fly to Amsterdam and stay in a hotel for about $2,000, which was a hell of a lot of money, but it seemed like a fair price to attend the greatest party in the history of the world. First thing I did was call my mom and try to see if I could exchange my next 5 years' worth of Christmas gifts for one plane ticket to Europe.
You're an idiot!
It was a short conversation. Now I was definitely going. I spent the next couple hours trying to find a travel partner. I sent messages to everybody. No takers. Most people thought I was kidding. So finally I gave up. If I was going to go, I was going to go by myself. So I pulled out my credit card and booked the trip. I would fly in the morning of the game. I booked a couple nights at a place called the Tulip Inn. It was official. I was going to Amsterdam. A lengthy flight delay and a couple airport bars later, I was finally on my way to Holland with nothing but a backpack. I got to Amsterdam mid-morning, hit an ATM for some euro, and headed outside to look for a cab. So I stopped by my hotel for a few minutes, dropped my stuff off, went downstairs to the hotel and asked the concierge what was the fastest way to get downtown. She told me I could walk a few blocks, catch a train down to city center, and I was there. I got off the train and I was right in the middle of the city. I started strolling around, taking it all in. All the buildings were decorated, Dutch flags hanging out the windows, people wearing orange everywhere. I couldn't believe how many bicycles I saw. They were everywhere. Everybody was riding a bike. The streets were so narrow you could barely fit 2 cars down. After walking around for a while, I started to get thirsty, so I found a bar. So I sat down at the bar and ordered a beer. Made friends with my bartender pretty quickly. I asked her how far I was from Museum Plain. Immediately she gets a piece of paper out and writes me directions, gives it to me. So after a couple beers there, I decided to keep moving. I was going to start heading towards Museum Plain. On my way there, I saw another bar. A lot more going on inside this bar. So I decided to stop. As soon as I order a beer in my American accent, the bartender wants to know what I'm doing in Amsterdam. Business, studying abroad. I tell her, no, just here for the game. She laughs, goes back to the back of the bar, starts talking to a table of guys. And I can see him pointing at me and smiling. When the bartender got back behind the bar, she immediately poured me a beer and set it down in front of me. Said, this is from the boys in the back. I turned around and looked, and they were waving and smiling. She said, they want to meet you, go back there. Why would they want to meet me? She said, they're glad you're here, American. They want to show you a good time. So I picked up my glass and I started to walk towards the back of the bar. As I got closer, I noticed that these guys looked really young. They looked like high school kids. I sat down and they introduced themselves. First thing I said was, how old do you have to be to drink in Holland? And the biggest kid smiled, said, 16, American. This is the greatest country in the world. And today you're with us. I told them I was hoping to go to Museum Plain to see the game. They said, no problem, we'll take you there. I spent the rest of the afternoon following these high school boys around downtown Amsterdam. It was surreal. They were taking me in and out of alleys and dirty old bars. The smallest kid was wearing a backpack filled with Heineken. Every once in a while, he'd turn around and give me a thumbs up to see if I was ready for another one. We sat on some crates in an alley drinking lukewarm Heinekens for a while. Finally, the ringleader, Bjorn, looked at his watch and said, we better go. Drink up, American. So we jump up off these crates and we take off out of the alley. And right when we get to the street, it's the sea of people, sea of orange. Orange smoke, flags, Dutch fight songs. It was crazy. All marching like soldiers in one direction. I knew they were going to Museum Point. I had an orange shirt on and I might as well have been Dutch that day. No one questioned me. I marched with these people all the way to Museum Point. When I got there, I couldn't believe it. I was told later that there was over 100,000 people in that park for the game. Huge screens set up everywhere for the crowd. It was crazy. It went on like that until the game started. Once the game started, this nervous energy kind of took the crowd over. The game was scoreless all the way through extra time. A couple minutes away from a shootout, and then Spain scores a late goal. Just kills the entire crowd.
Fabregas, who looks for Iniesta, who's onside! Spain score! They take advantage of the extra man, and they believe they're going to win the World Cup for the very first time.
A few more minutes went by, final whistle blew, and it was over. Spain had won the 2010 World Cup. I'd never seen so many sad people together at once. It was like a national tragedy had happened. I said goodbye to my tour guides, and I made my way back to the train. Once I got to the train, I realized it stopped running. So I went to an ATM to get some euro for a cab when I realized I'd already taken out my max amount for the day. Briefly, I considered sleeping in the streets, decided against it, found the train station I'd gotten off at, and walked the train tracks as best as I could remember back to the Tulip Inn. When I went through tunnels, I had to use the flash on my camera to light the way. As I walked alone, I thought about how fun the streets of Spain probably were right now. Ridiculous. I was supposed to be swimming butt naked in a canal with Dutch babes at the greatest party in the history of the world. But instead I'm walking 8 miles alone on train tracks. I knew I should have went to Madrid.